Hear ye, for I have returned to the promised land of World Cup qualifying discussion. A lot of shit happened while I was gone for like a week and a half. And the most heartbreaking of all is the one that just happened. And we're going to get to that, and it makes me incredibly sad. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. I really am not. If you are queasy, squeamish, if you're averse to soul-crushing defeats, then this isn't the video for you, right? If you want to have a great day and not feel bad about something, you probably shouldn't watch this. But we'll start with South America, and that's where a whole lot of fun shit is happening, because in round 15, right, round 15 and 16 out of 18 rounds in qualifying is what we're looking at right now, we had Venezuela and Bolivia. Now, if you're familiar with the table, you know that these two teams are battling for 7th, essentially, but Venezuela's at home. And anytime you take Bolivia off the top of a mountain, they're a steaming pile of ass. And so they were bad, and Venezuela won 2-0. Colombia and Peru battled to a 0-0 draw. If you know anything about World Cup qualifying, you know that Colombia is the master of the draw, right? But they currently are safe as long as Venezuela doesn't keep winning, which we're going to get to in a second. Chile and Argentina played. Argentina won 1-0. Chile's like the worst team in South America right now, so not a surprise. Brazil and Ecuador drew. That's because these two teams are level on points. They're still level on points. And both of these teams, by the way, do go on to clinch World Cup qualification in this window. Ecuador, a lot of people's sleeper picks to maybe be able to make one of those surprise World Cup semifinal type runs. I don't know if I'm that much on board with these guys, but they are good, right? Ecuador has shown consistently that they are good. And more importantly, Brazil has shown consistently that they are not. And then there's Paraguay, the surprise team of the entire qualifying cycle. They are running basically right next to Brazil after this win against Uruguay. In Uruguay, not a great look, right? To lose by multiple goals to Paraguay, but this is a win that essentially guarantees that Paraguay is going to be into the World Cup. And that brings us to round 16, where Peru gets a very much needed draw against Ecuador. It's a surprising result that kind of keeps Peru alive. And now I can show you guys the table. At least if I can navigate this thing quickly enough, and who the hell knows if I'm going to be able to do that. Yes, where Argentina obviously has been flying, they're totally through. And then you see Peru, they got the draw. That means they are 6 points off of the 7th spot now. The reason that they're 6 points off that 7th spot is Venezuela lost at Uruguay 2-0. That's not like a surprising result. It's a good win for Uruguay. They would have been on 21 points if they had lost that match, which would have been dicey, considering Venezuela would have also been on 21 points. But the win virtually guarantees Uruguay is going to be there unless Venezuela wins their last two, Uruguay loses their last two, and the goal difference works out. So Uruguay and Paraguay basically feeling perfectly comfortable. Paraguay, though, they could have clinched. They just didn't because they lost 1-0 at Brazil. Colombia took an early lead, or not early lead, but they had the lead before Argentina scored pretty late on after an Enzo Fernandez horror tackle got him sent off. That is another draw for the Kings of the Draw. 7 draws in 16 matches for Colombia. They're still not totally safe. Like Paraguay and Uruguay, you would have to bottle it massively, and more importantly, you would need Venezuela, a team that's won just 4 of 16 matches, which I realize how hilarious it is that Venezuela is in 7th and with a chance to go to the World Cup after winning just 4 of 16 matches. You would need that team to win their last 2 matches to even create a situation where you could potentially not make the World Cup. For Colombia, you need Venezuela to get 4 points. That is much more doable, and Colombia would have to lose, essentially, its last 2 matches. It's also only lost 4 of 16 matches, so that's probably unlikely. This draw, likely enough, right? It's likely enough to send Colombia to the World Cup. No, and once you get to the World Cup, nobody remembers how you got there. But then maybe the most important result for creating drama in this entire cycle. The first team is officially eliminated. That's Chile. They lost because, well, Bolivia got to go back to the top of the fucking mountain. They go back to the top of the mountain. They win 2-0. And that win puts all the pressure right here. You've got Bolivia, perennially the worst team in South America that is somehow, despite conceding 32 goals in 16 matches, managed to get within a point of the Intercontinental Playoff spot, which is currently inhabited by Venezuela. Okay, Venezuela has never been to the World Cup. Now, this 7th spot, the reason it's a different color, you go to the Intercontinental Playoff, you play against some teams from Africa, from Asia, from CONCACAF, but the South American team is going to be a favorite when they show up at that party. Whether it is Bolivia or Venezuela, they're going to have a chance. And I'm not going to lie, I would love to see either of these teams show up there, right? Peru and Chile have had their day. Chile in particular had their golden generation. Peru's been to the World Cup recently. Neither of these teams have. It's a suck-off for the 7th place. Who is going to be worse over the last 2 matches? And obviously the most important thing that you could consider here is what are those last 2 matches? Well, Venezuela plays Argentina and Bolivia plays at Colombia. Wouldn't be surprised if both of those matches were losses, which would bring us to basically the final match day, which I'll pull that up for you now. Round 18. Okay, and round 18 is Bolivia at home, which is where they need to be, but against Brazil. Now, the good thing for Bolivia is that Brazil is likely already going to be through, so how much do you really want to try at that kind of altitude? Well, Bolivia is likely going to be playing for its World Cup life in that game. Venezuela will be at home against Colombia. Most likely outcome is a draw. But the real key for Bolivia is that they're going to have to find a way to get 2 points at least out of Brazil or Colombia. If Colombia was at home, maybe I'd back them. But Colombia's on the road, and their goal difference is so much worse than Venezuela's. Venezuela might be able to lose both matches and still take this spot. That's what I'm saying. Maybe Bolivia can get a draw against Brazil, but they likely have to win this game. Because Lord knows, if you've ever watched Bolivia play not on top of a mountain, they are so bad. They're not going to win this game at Colombia. I would be absolutely stunned if they did, especially considering Colombia is not guaranteed qualification going into this match. And so they are going to have a fire under their ass to play in a way that Brazil likely will not in this final match day. But that is really the only drama left. Is it going to be Bolivia or Venezuela that's going to take that 7th spot? Colombia could offer some drama if they lose to Bolivia and Venezuela manages to beat Argentina. But, that's kind of laughable that I'm even mentioning that sort of thing out loud. Let's go on to CONCACAF now, because CONCACAF is in qualifying. But what I'm going to tell you is that absolutely nothing interesting happened in CONCACAF qualifying, except for one thing. I'm going to find the one thing. One team, maybe, that I didn't expect to get results that did actually get results. Bermuda needed to win this match against Cuba in order to get to the next round. Bermuda, who has never really done anything important for the world of football or the world in general outside of creating a mysterious triangle that fascinated me as a child, basically. Well, they managed to come and score in the 74th minute. Some dude named Lamb. And that goal in the 74th minute has given Bermuda a top 2 spot over Cuba in order to send itself to the next round along with Honduras. Okay, now I'm going to see if I can get to the actual standings here for CONCACAF, because this round is really just eliminating all of the bad teams. There are no particularly notable teams that have been eliminated up to this point. Kind of embarrassing that Trinidad and Tobago got this close to being eliminated by Grenada, but they have managed to get to the next round with Costa Rica. Curacao looking dangerous, right? They've gone through with Haiti, but I'm saying they're looking dangerous because they beat a pretty solid Haitian team 5-1. Now, granted, you never quite know what's going on with Haiti's, green card situation. They have a terrible time getting visas. They have situations all the time where they can't call up 8 or 10 guys because they can't play wherever they're trying to go play, right? But Curacao beating Haiti 5-1 gives hope to something that I want you to root for. I really want you to root for. Curacao has a chance. They're really the only likely team that has a chance to break Iceland's record for the smallest country to make it to a World Cup. Population's about 150,000. Right? And they're kind of like Morocco. Half their team, at least, is born, abroad. Curacao does have a good diaspora, but the country itself has 150,000 people in it. Right? There are a couple of teams in Oceania that might be able to beat, New Caledonia or Tahiti, that might be able to beat New Zealand and make a World Cup and break Iceland's record. But Curacao, they're the smallest country, really, that has a legitimate chance, and they are playing well. So that could be an exciting thing to watch. Panama and Nicaragua got through. Jamaica and Guatemala got through. Very disappointing, in my opinion, for the Dominican Republic. They're the most surprising team that is not going through at this stage. Because if you remember, the Dominican Republic went to the Olympics in men's football. I don't know how they managed to pull that off for their U23 team, right? Going to the Olympics is the hardest qualification that you have out of CONCACAF. Less teams go to the Olympics from CONCACAF than the World Cup, than even, it's wild to me the Dominican Republic can make that. It shows what a miracle it was that they made it. They've been getting better, right? Their clubs are doing better in the CONCACAF Champions League and everything, but still not able to put it together in the full senior national team level. And then Suriname and El Salvador, the two teams you would have expected to get out of this group, got out of this group. But Puerto Rico showing some game. St. Vincent and the Grenadines would have used to roll Puerto Rico most of the time, but that is not happening anymore. So good for them. But that's taken us to the third stage where basically all of the teams that have qualified here are going to be drawn into 3 groups of 4. Right, that's how the qualifying works in CONCACAF, and there are 3.5 spots. So if you win the group that you're playing in, you get to go to the World Cup, and we are all Curacao, right? Oceania is already done. Africa took this window off. They weren't playing at all. They were doing some like AFCON qualifying and stuff. But now we go to Europe, and Europe is incredibly confusing. If you're wondering what the fuck's going on when it comes to European qualification, half the groups haven't started yet, right? So you see these groups of 4 now that Europe's redone its qualifying, which, by the way, group of 4, you only got 6 matches. Used to be 10 or 8 in different European groups, but now you play less matches, there is more potential for variation, more potential for a team like Slovenia, for a team like Iceland or Azerbaijan, Bulgaria, Georgia, right? These teams, the door is going to be open for those types of teams in this situation when you're playing 6 matches instead of 8 or 10, right? Those groups, though, with 4 teams, they haven't started. The groups with 5 teams have started, but they look all jumbled up because you look at the matches played. Netherlands has played 2. Finland has played 4. Finland did beat Poland all of a sudden, and that complicates this group. That definitely takes the cake for like the weirdest result, but obviously the Netherlands still looks like the favorite far and away to take the top spot in this group. The very timely debate of will Poland somehow manage to fumble the bag again seems to be on, thanks to the Finnish win. Group H had Bosnia and Herzegovina come out and drop a dub on San Marino to put itself top of the group, but Austria has beaten Romania and San Marino, of course, as well, in order to put itself in this second place position. The only team that's really laid an egg up to this point would be Romania. They've played 4 of their matches. They've lost the 2 key matches to the other 2 teams that have a realistic chance to get into qualifying positions out of this group. So if you're Romania, one of the 2 teams that's already played half of your matches, you're not feeling very good. This, however, is the thing I want to talk about the most, because Italy, until 2018, had missed the World Cup 1 time. Ever. They've been every single World Cup since 1930 except for 1 in like the 50s, right? Until 2018 when they missed. And then, of course, in 2022 World Cup qualifying, they lost to North Macedonia in the European playoff and got eliminated. And that brings us to 2026 World Cup qualifying. Right now, the last World Cup match that Italy played, multiple-time champion of the world, was in 2014. That was 11 years ago. I was 18 years old when that happened. I was in high school when that happened, when they were playing in that tournament. That was the Brazil World Cup. That was Brazil losing 7-1 to Germany. Right? That was James Rodriguez with the chest and volley. That was the last World Cup that Italy managed to make. And they show up and go down 3-0 at halftime to Norway on the road. This is a Norwegian team, by the way, that went on to then beat Estonia 1-0 in the next match. I mean, Norway is getting better. They've got Odegaard. They've got Holland, right? They should be competing for positions in major tournaments, but they haven't. Those guys have not played in a major tournament. Norway hasn't been to a major tournament since like 2000 or something. And yet, here they are, blowing the doors off Italy. Like, where's the urgency in a match like this? 0.21 XG? I'm sorry. Are they putting something in the pasta sauce? This makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And the win for Norway creates a situation where Norway has now played 4 matches. They've won all 4. They beat Estonia and Moldova, and Israel's like a dark horse in this group, right? They managed to beat them too. And so Norway has 4 matches left in this group, 2 of them being Estonia and Moldova, which should be automatic wins. Italy's going to need everything to go perfectly in order to turn this around. The only win that they've got is a 2-0 win over Moldova that they scratched out after their loss to Norway. Right, but Italy still has Israel on the docket. That's another team that could potentially give them some problems, especially if they play as well as they played against Norway. And I saw the recent odds that said Norway had an 84% chance to finish top of this group now after that result. Right, their next match coming up is against Moldova. Italy's going to be staring up this group. All of the pressure is on again. And honestly, if they fumble it a little bit against Israel, they're going to be worried that they're not going to get into this second position. That's the playoff position, and God forbid they run into North Macedonia again. But who the hell knows what's going on with the Italian national team? Absolutely terrible. Then we take a trip down to this group, which looks more exciting than it potentially actually is. Although, huge shout out to North Macedonia for continuing to keep up appearances by getting an absolutely sensational draw against the Belgians with an 86th minute goal. I am blown away with North Macedonia's ability to get these important results. They also drew against Wales, which puts them top of the group because Wales did lose to Belgium. And what was a wild shootout that Belgium was able to complete thanks to Kevin De Bruyne in the 88th minute. He put them ahead 4-3. So big opportunity missed for Wales to get that draw. A huge goal for Belgium. But I mean, if you wanted to start this group in a way that was really going to spice things up, this was it. The problem for Wales and North Macedonia is that Belgium is likely going to beat Kazakhstan and Liechtenstein and thus be on 10 points. But North Macedonia and Wales and their epic battle for second place in this group is going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. England did lose to Senegal, but fortunately for them, that was a friendly because Senegal is not in Europe. They are top of their group. They're doing fine. Latvia managed to pull out a draw against Albania, which is something that Albania is likely going to regret. Serbia has played 2 less matches. They have not played against England, but they've also not played against Latvia. So that does present them with an opportunity to jump ahead of Albania for that second place. And then Group L, which is a very fun, open-ended group. It's got Croatia in there, Czech Republic in there, Faroe Islands maybe feeling like the door might be open. They only lost 2-1 in their opening match to Czech Republic, but then they lost to Montenegro and squeaked a win against Gibraltar. So even though I am a believer that the Faroe Islands can take points off of big teams, it looks like they might be done. Yeah, Czech Republic, though, with 9 points from their first 4 matches, they are putting the pressure on that second place position, and I don't know. I don't know if Montenegro has the juice to be able to keep up with those 2 teams. So I think they're going to be able to keep that top spot. But the big news out of European qualifying was obviously the fact that Norway took care of freaking business. They went out and took care of business. And that brings us to Asia. Unbelievable. And this is where we're getting to the sadness, and we will get to the sadness, okay? But first, there's happiness, and that would be Uzbekistan, right? They managed to qualify along with Iran in automatic spots going to the World Cup. Pretty clearly, early on in this qualifying window, you saw the United Arab Emirates, who were trying to take Uzbekistan's spot there at the end. If they'd managed to beat Uzbekistan, they would have been a point away going into the final match day, which wouldn't have mattered because Uzbekistan flattened Qatar. The 2-time reigning Asian champions, Qatar, have somehow managed to finish 4th in this group of 6, but they are going to the playoffs, so maybe Qatar can still actually make it to a World Cup on their own merit. The UAE and Qatar are 2 of 6 teams that are now going into 2 groups of 3. You play each other team once, and then if you win that group, you go to the World Cup. If you finish second in the group, you have a playoff against the other second-place team, I think, to go to the Intercontinental Playoff. So it is an incredibly long, protracted journey, but the automatic spots have been given away. And then there's Group B, where we had South Korea eventually pull away, right? It was a little dicey coming into this final window, but they beat Iraq, they beat Kuwait, they got the 2 wins that they needed to grab automatic World Cup qualification. And then there was Jordan. Jordan with a massive 3-0 win over Oman. Okay, and Oman was bottling here. Oman has only won 1 of their last 5 matches, okay? But Jordan had never been to a World Cup before, right? Iraq was on their heels. Jordan's sitting there on 13 points. Iraq is sitting there on 12 points. Iraq manages to go out there and lose to South Korea, which is no shame in that. And Jordan gets a big win against Oman, and that just puts him in the World Cup. One of the 6 automatic qualifying spots goes to Jordan. Congratulations to Michael. And then Iraq did manage to beat Jordan on the final match day. So they definitely bitter for Iraq because they feel like they're the better team after that, because I was on the road too. But Iraq is now headed into the 6-team kind of group stage playoff thing. And that brings us to the incredibly soul-crushing, heartbreaking situation. So coming into this window, Palestine was sitting on 6 points after a stunning, I mean really genuinely stunning last-second win, 97th minute, against Iraq, a team that everybody would have said was better than Palestine, but that win kept Palestine alive. Because the situation was Oman on 10 points, Palestine on 6. But you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, Palestine probably needs to win its last 2 matches or at least get a win and a draw. in order to surpass Oman. Well, Oman does its part, obviously, getting blown out by Jordan. And Palestine shows up and goes on the road against Kuwait and beats them 2-0. So all of a sudden, a team that had won 0 matches after 7, they had 3 points after 7 matches, now had 9 points after 9 matches. 2 consecutive wins for Palestine, a team that, by the way, had made the last 16 of the Asian Cup. So they're not like the little engine that could. They are at least a decent team when it comes to Asian competition. And then it's time to compete against Oman. This is the only dramatic match in Asia on the final day, because Australia, in typical Australian fashion, made it interesting by winning 1 of their first 6, and then went on a 4-match win streak that effectively clinched the World Cup for them before the final match day after they beat Japan 1-0. They needed to lose by 5 to Saudi Arabia to give up this spot. They didn't. They beat Saudi Arabia, actually, 2-1. So Japan and Australia go through. Congrats to them. Very awkward for Saudi Arabia, a team that's hosting the World Cup, a team that is trying to invest very heavily in the game, obviously, that beat Argentina at the last World Cup. Well, now they have to go to that playoff thing. Now they are still, obviously, a favored team to go through. They will be joined by Indonesia, who went in with a rapturous 6-0 loss to Japan, but managed to win back-to-back games against Bahrain and China in order to elevate itself. Honestly, the farthest Indonesia's ever gone in World Cup qualifying, so that's huge for the 4th biggest nation in the world. But as you can see, going into the final match day, there was no drama outside of Oman-Palestine. And then early in the second half, it was Palestine that struck first. They've been lethal on these all qualifying. It's a set piece. Honestly, it's some pretty poor defending. Probably need a guy on that post. Right, but who cares? They go absolutely buck wild. It's a goal for Palestine, a goal that would send Palestine to that 2 groups of 3 playoff, right, that would keep the World Cup dream alive a little bit longer. And then after this goal, Oman in like the 70th minute gets a red card. And so it's time. It is time, right? They can sense it. They can smell it. It's a miraculous comeback, right? It is 3 straight wins to go from 3 points to 12 points and grab the last playoff spot and join Iraq and the UAE and Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Indonesia in going to play in these 2 groups of 3. Then in the 97th minute, and I will hate this call until the day I die, right? And probably after that, the referee gives a penalty. And you could see the Palestinian players just kind of collapse. This is the penalty call, and I don't know if I'll ever get over it. The ball's swung in from out here. He's onside. That's the pen. And they go on to score it, the draw for Oman. And obviously, if you're Omani, Oman's never been to the World Cup either. Right, and they've been threatening. They've been getting better. They beat Japan in World Cup qualifying, right? They're really turning it up and becoming a better team. And it's like a healthy, stable nation that's developing its football program, and being able to get to this stage of World Cup qualifying is huge for them. And I'm happy for them. But to make this call, just forget everything else, from a sporting perspective, it could be any nation, let alone Palestine, right? But to make this call in the 97th minute with World Cup survival on the line, whoever loses this match, if there is a loser, is out of the World Cup. The winner stays alive, goes to the next round. The dream is still alive. I mean, that is everything or nothing, right, is what's on the line here. And this is what's going to decide the fate of nations. Maybe a bit of a heel clip, but honestly, I've watched this from multiple angles, and it is hard to tell. And there is a rule in the NFL where you can't call a pass interference penalty, if the ball's in the air and you shove somebody, if it's uncatchable. This guy's never getting to this ball. I think refereeing should be a little bit subjective, because I think this sport gets worse when you make this call. If it's the 30th minute of a friendly, maybe we can have a conversation. Maybe. I need to see it from a couple more angles. I'm not convinced that this is, it's not intentional at all. The defender is not even looking, right? I think the attacker, honestly, personal opinion, kind of drags his legs and is trying to get the call, because at this point, it's very obvious to him he's not going to be able to get to the ball. But with the 97th minute, with 20 seconds left of stoppage time, to call this, to determine the fate of nations is a crime. Actually. And I'm just on the sporting perspective alone. You could sub in any country for Palestine. But then you think about the fact that it's Palestine. And all of the, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. If there was one nation that could have used some good news, it was them. And should that factor into a referee's decision? No. But the sporting aspect should. And you cannot make this call. You cannot. It could be Kyrgyzstan, it could be freaking North Korea on the receiving end of this call, and I will be making the same argument. You cannot make this call. Congratulations to Oman. The attacking player managed to put the referee in a position where he had a chance to make this call, and as a result, they still have a chance to go to the World Cup. Even though they're not in great form right now, they still have a chance to go to the World Cup. But that is a soul-crushing way to lose, and I am not over the fact that it happened.